How do you intend to gain possession of this land that you want, and how do you intend to get there?
It's a contribution that the black man made in this country, which amounts to 310 years of slave labor, for which we have never been given a dime or a cent. Places a burden upon the American white man today, for which the government should pay. Since we cannot live in peace together, mixed up on this continent, the alternative to that solution is to divide a separate part of this country into which our people can migrate, and in which the government again should supply us with the machinery and the tools necessary to establish our own independent society and our own independent country. And in this way, it will be creating a solution that the black man himself, our people, ourselves, can bring about if we have that capability. And for your clarification, because this has been brought up, some people say, well, why should the government do this? If this government can send billions of dollars to communist countries like Poland and Yugoslavia, and to neutralist countries in Asia and Africa who have never made any contribution whatsoever to the sum net worth of this economy and country, and at the same time, this government feels that it is too much to set about something real to solve the problem for the slaves who made a greater contribution even than your people did, why the government doesn't even deserve to continue to function as a government.
What land is available that's not already possessed by others?
When you came to this country, the land was inhabited by the Indians, and you didn't have any problem then.
Free the land, battle cry in our freedom call. Political prisoners in the system, we say free them all. You hear the call, haters never wanna see you ball. But I'm a freedom fighter, I just wanna see them fall. Standing tall, cause we trapped in the system. They slapped us in prison, just a part of capitalism. I'm a revolutionary, I adapt to the system. I ain't playing with y'all haters, I come strapped when I kick them.
Black fist in the air as we walk through the door, representing Malcolm X and Assata Shakur. Queen Mother Moore, Batula, Shakur. Fight to free the land is what we doing it for. The struggle, the leader, for Huey, Mamiya, Garvey, Fred Hampton, General Hamisha, Grandmaster Teacher. He's blasting y'all, you're gonna feel it. The voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
We got to have thinkers that are going to direct us in terms of how we're going to be able to achieve the goal of liberation throughout the world. We have the same problem. That is neo-colonialism. We have no control over any area in which we live. Matter of fact, we have been diminished, and all of those things have happened under the American system of capitalism. That's why we're saying we want to break away and create our own, and have our own self-government, and have our own control over our lives.
You're listening to the Voices of New Africa, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. Free the land.
And welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Africa, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I am your host, Brother Prophecy, and of course, I'm with my comrade, my brother, my elder, one of my teachers, the one and only Grandmaster Teacher for Dolly. How you doing, comrade?
I'm doing as great as I can under the conditions under which we live in this world, based on colonialism and neo-colonialism and settler colonialism.
Okay, and you brought up a couple of interesting terms, and we like, as we say, our motto is to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. You used a term called settler colonialism or settler colonies. What exactly is that?
Yes. Okay. So one example of a settler colony is the United States itself, where the Europeans came and took over the land from the indigenous people, stole the land,
And in any area where you reside, and then another good example is what is the state of the illegal state called Israel, in which the settler colonists came over and took over the land of Palestine and have renamed it to being Israel, and are doing everything they can to destroy the indigenous people that were there when the United States and the West set up this state for what they call Jews, but the Zionist actually it's a Zionist state settler colony, and we see the results of what's happening in terms of genocide. Just as the native people of the Americas were, subjected to genocide, even though the word genocide didn't come into existence until after World War II. We know that genocide existed before then because we got these states that are in control of all the resources and have put the native people on what they call reservations in the United States and settler colonies inside of Palestine called Gaza and West Bank. This is a good discussion in terms of beginning to understand what happened. That there can be no peace until the rightful people and the land of these people are returned to their control, so that they can develop their own culture and own self-government over their own lives. And this is what we're fighting against, because the African has been brought over to the Americas to create these settler colonies, and we're still not free. This is what we have to understand.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned how Israel's occupation of Palestine is a good example, a present day example of a settler colony. And a lot of people, when we start talking about the conflict and the genocide that's happening over there, a lot of our people will push back. Some of our people push back and say, why are y'all talking about them? We need to be focused on us. Why is it important that we even mention them? Why is their struggle important to us? And what is the parallel? Why is it even important that we know?
Yes. So they have our problem is not that we have been colonized physically, but also we've been colonized mentally, in thinking that the European way is the right way, that we should become a part of this whole process. And we have been fooled, in other words, we've been fooled by the system of capitalism and imperialism, to thinking that the Europeans were correct in going around and taking over the minds of all the people. So therefore, we have a problem that is, that is universal in terms of Africa, in that Africans are trying to basically become European. And this is a strategy that the Europeans concocted when they went into the different areas. Just as if in the settler colony of the United States, when they once they defeated the native people here, because they called Indians, they took control of the children and did everything they could to make the children think that they are Americans, and to lose their whole cultural identity under this situation. So when we look at what we call the West and its control over the minds of the people of the world, into thinking that they, in other words, that this land that they're existing on outside of Europe is this land that was given to them about it, and usually they use religious kind of connotation in making us think that religion has given them the right to go all over the world and take over other people's uh, land and also destroy their culture. And the main way that they're doing that is through miseducation. And that's why we said we're going to educate the uneducated, and we're going to also have to do the miseducated, because the miseducated have come to believe that they can make a deal, with the European and become part of that whole process of colonization. And so therefore, that's why when we talk about the so-called misleadership that we see in our community, we see that it's based on the slave being educated by the master, and the slave succumbing to the teachings of the master, and thinking that we cannot ourselves liberate ourselves, or even to think that we should not liberate ourselves from this system, because we were like people that needed to be liberated through the Europeans' teaching, through whatever, or even Arab teaching, to become part of this system we talk about, the capitalist system, this international system that you always talk about, and remind us that we're talking about a system. We are organizing ourselves to overthrow a system that is international in scope, and so therefore, this terminology, settler colony, and other terminology that we're going to talk about tonight is a part of our re-educating of ourselves and our people.
Exactly. Well, we have a lot that we have to get to today. We can talk about this subject really the whole show, but like I say, it's a lot been going on. And if you just tuning in, drop us a like, drop a comment, let us know who you are, where you're checking out, so we can converse with you and we can have the conversation with you all, because that's the most important thing. The Voices of New Africa is not just these two brothers that you see on your screen. It's a conversation with everybody. So like I said, we invite everybody to make your comments, give a shout out. You agree with what we say, let us know. You disagree, let's have a conversation about it. That's a big part of growth, because we're always not going to agree. But we always like to start the show off with something we call Around the World in Black Again.
Live from Ida B. Wells City, spanning from Africa, Asia, all the way to the United States of America. This is Around the World in Black Again. It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on?
And this is Around the World in Black Again, and I want to give a big shout out to our comrade Atiba, just checking in. How you doing, brother? But I guess we can start it off with so many stories that we have started out to talk about today. But we can start it off right here in Memphis, Tennessee, because the National Guards are here this Friday. Around 145 to 150 troops have been deployed in the Bluff City to supposedly stabilize and support local law enforcement as a part of this big safety task force to deal with this terrible crime problem that we have in Memphis, Tennessee. Apparently, we've seen an increase in law enforcement activity, especially in poverty-stricken areas and places you would consider high crime areas. There's been a lot. It's been pushed back. You've seen a lot of car chases. You've seen some resistance from the community from having this. Just the other day, I saw this sister. She came into work crying because police had just had her at gunpoint because they said that she looked like she was in a car that fit the description of something else that happened. So as we always knew, these type of things that always happen. You know, the people are the ones that always get the short end of the stick. What do you have to say about this situation?
Okay, so let me say this. What we find is that they are basically arresting people for traffic, things. It's like, for example, a license plate on their car, or I think they, in other words, these people are brought here to reinforce, all the things that happened during COVID when the police wasn't going around, arresting people for simple things, and so it's pitiful that we talk about the so-called misleadership that we have, that they have accepted the Trump add-on to the federal already. The federal had already been in Memphis. They already have been. Matter of fact, they have arrested 96 so-called gang members. Prior to this, a couple months ago, they did 2 sets of arrests, and which added up to be 96 youngsters that are supposedly gang members in Memphis. And so consequently, but we're talking about a red state. We're talking about Tennessee. The governor of Tennessee basically, is behind the Trump push to add Memphis to the cities that have been, invaded by the National Guard under the federalization of Trump. And so when we look at what's happening here, is that there's really no basic virtual change or anything like this, because the federal government and a federal task force is already in Memphis. Even prior to this group that came in starting last Friday. And so we got to begin to understand, our people to understand, that this is like what they call that, where you got an invasion of federal troops into a local area, and basically they're basically restoring the mass incarceration. Let's say 20 years ago, there was a move against mass incarceration. What they're doing now is reincorporated mass, incarceration. And this is the kind of thing that we have to begin to educate our people on, because our people, we have been hurt by, certain kind of crime waves, what do you call that, where people are fighting each other and killing each other to the point of where, it got to be really critical in the city of Memphis and in other areas, other cities in the United States. So it's all a part of that process that we have to begin to engage our people in the community to take control over our community.
Exactly. Community control is really important, because a lot of people, I think, have a certain amount of confusion in their mind, especially when you're looking at the crime problems and the problems that you see in cities all over America when they're dealing with crime. I mean, we've understood for a very long time that crime is the product of poverty. Whenever you have places where there are high levels of poverty, you also have high places where there are high levels of crime. Memphis is no different. Memphis, especially Memphis has always been a poverty-stricken city, for a very long time, for decades. And after the COVID situation and the inflation and the increases, then that just compound problems. I can't tell you how many times just going to the gas station or just going by my day, I encounter individuals who are out on the street begging, not necessarily for money, begging for you to go into the store and buy them a can of soup or some noodles or some food. You know, I know just the other day it was this lady at the gas station said, "Hey, can you just buy me a gallon of gas?" A gallon of gas. See, this is what was happening in Memphis, Tennessee. People are begging for just basic food. Not crab legs, not all these type of things, you know, and begging for gas, begging for, you know, and a lot of times these are young people. So if you're not doing something to address the poverty issue, if you're not doing something to address the poor education system, if you're not doing anything to address mental health crisis that exists in Memphis, because you see just a boatload of people on the street every day in Memphis who are suffering from mental health crisis, and there are just no resources for them, not enough resources for them to get the type of help that they need. In fact, if you go to 201 Poplar right now, the majority of the people down there are suffering from some type of mental health issues, and many of them undiagnosed. Many of them have not gotten the treatment in which they need. So if you're not doing something, if you're not putting your resources into the source of the problem, then you're not really dealing with the problem. You know, you can bring down all the troops, all the federal agents, all the whoever you want to occupy the people and create tension and oppression amongst the people, but that's not going to eradicate the problem of crime. You might have some kind of temporary slowdown because you have such an oppressive presence in the city. And, you know, just for the record, like over the last 2 weeks, there have been like 600 arrests being made in Memphis, Tennessee. But like I said, this is not a real solution. This is right. This is not a solution to the actual problem. It's not going to change the condition. If anything, you know, the conditions will manifest itself in another way. You know, and they can continue to oppress the people and be an oppressive force on the people until we build up a powder keg and Memphis just explode. You know, and because it's happening in the past, you know, it's exploded in the 60s, you know. So I would suggest, you know, to all of our people out there and to everybody who's just checking in, make sure y'all drop a like, drop a comment, let us know who you are, so we can interact with you, because we love interacting with y'all. The show is really about y'all. But like I said, if we're not doing something concretely to deal with the problem of economics, of poverty, then you're not going to hit the problem of crime. You're not going to solve the problem of crime. You're only going to, as you said, solve the problem of the prison industrial complex and recruit more bodies into the prison system so they can be legally enslaved, as the Constitution has stated. So, like I said, this is not a solution, regardless to what side you lay on this particular issue. Until we deal with concrete economics, and ultimately it boils down to this economic system that is based on exploitation. You know, we talk about re-educating the miseducated. Well, I mean, that's where the miseducation starts, by saying that this education, that this economic system is based on freedom, when the reality is the economic system is based on exploitation, and the economic system itself creates the situation in which we see. So, you know, I'm a yield on that point. Did you have something that you wanted to say before?
So let me say that on this topic, what we're saying is, when we talk about the United States, any area, any city or any urban area, and we're talking about, because we're in the West, that these are criminal states. I'm talking about the United States. You know, it's governed by criminals who are basically facilitators for the capitalists, who basically are robbing the people, and so therefore the conditions that we're talking about should be a condition that will lead ultimately to revolution by the people, because until we can overthrow that system, we're not going to see any kind of real solution to any of our problems that and we won't be able to resolve any of those problems by facilitating armies of people to come in and to arrest our youth and put our youth in jail, and this is basically what's happening right now. And like I said, to go to another point that so before we won't forget it, Assata Shakur died, a couple of weeks ago, and
September 25th.
because in coming on to the station, we always talk about Assata Shakur being one of the great leaders of African people during the Black Liberation Movement that was defeated by the imperialists. The imperialists have had her to she escaped from prison and went to Cuba, got our freedom, went to Cuba. Matter of fact, it was an engineered escape by the Black Liberation Army and got her out of prison. And but ultimately, she was 79 years old when she died. And this is what we got to remind ourselves. We got political prisoners, people that are in prison right now. And many of them are the same age as Assata Shakur, are close to that age, and they may die in prison. So we cannot forget the political prison. We've got to begin to engineer our struggle to free all political prisoners.
Exactly. And I wasn't forgetting about Assata Shakur. I actually was saving that for last, but it's all good. But yeah, as our comrade said, the great Assata Shakur has transitioned September 25th. She, just a little bit about her. She was part of the Black Panther Party. She was part of the Black Liberation Army. She was a true revolutionary. She was involved in a shootout with police, as well as other brothers who were part of the Black Liberation Army, in which she sustained several gunshots. She was shot like once under the arm, once, close to the chest. And she endured all type of torture while she was in the hospital. She actually has a book called Assata, an autobiography. If you have not read that book, read it. I advise anybody who is serious about the liberation of our people to read the writings of Assata Shakur. It will change your life. In fact, in a second, I'm going to play a testimony from our comrade, Brother Atiba. I had an opportunity to talk to him, and he gave a few words about our sister Assata Shakur and what she meant to him. I'm going to play that in a minute. But like I said, if you have not read this sister's book, read it. First of all, it's a great book. And when you read it, you'll be like, wow, this actually happened. It sounds like a movie just reading the book, but this is something that 100% happened. And one of the beautiful things about the legacy of this sister is, so many times when we look at our great heroes and sheroes, especially our great freedom fighters, it doesn't end. It doesn't have a happy ending. It ends with tragedy. Fred Hampton assassinated, Martin Luther King assassinated, Malcolm X assassinated, Medgar Evers assassinated, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But Assata Shakur, which, even in her book, she said, look, they trying to set me up to die in prison. They trying to kill me in prison. They put her in prison, surrounded by the enemy, surrounded by skinheads and Nazis and guards that beating her and brutalizing her and throwing her in the hole and all of these terrible conditions. And she said, either I'm going to die or I'm going to escape. And she got on down and she went to Cuba where they gave her asylum. And she gained her freedom. And you should, look up Assata while she was in Cuba. So you can, get a point of view from somewhere else that is not the United States, that does not have the oppressive conditions of the United States, and listen to her talk about how, in other countries, she has a sense of freedom that she never felt here in the United States. And in fact, you know, to the end, when just researching Assata and looking at some of the interviews of the police, they was talking about her. I can remember when her book came out, one of the chief of police of, I think, New Jersey at the time said that he finds it offensive that she's able to profit off of a book, you know, and after this police has lost his life, blah, blah, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, you know, when I heard that, it's a sense of joy came over me, because you have to understand that during it, especially during that time period, Assata Shakur, as well as the Black Liberation Army, as well as the Black Panther, as everybody in the Black movement, was under severe attack. The United States government went to war with our people, open war, and they're still at war. Don't get it twisted. They are still at war with our people to this day, but it was open war on our people. It was open war on Panthers. It was shoot on sight, you know. And many of our brothers and sisters died. Many of our brothers and sisters just got just tore apart. You know, look at what happened to Chairman Fred Hampton Sr., shot while he was sleeping. So when you understand the conditions, and this was under the umbrella of the counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, which, according to the United States government, was an illegal program. So these are the conditions in which her arrests were made. These are the conditions that so many of our political prisoners were incarcerated under an illegal program. It was operated by the United States government. That's why we got to free our political prisoners. You know, and they accused her of killing the police, even though all the evidence showed that she was shot with her hands up, just like Mike Brown. So, so we have to understand clearly, especially when dealing with the time period, regardless of who shot that police in that shootout. That was a time where we were at open war with the pigs of this country. So whoever squeezed the trigger, the trigger needed to be squeezed. I want to give a big shout out to my brother, Joe Gonzalez. How you doing? Revolutionary greetings to you, comrade. That's a good brother, and we gotta connect more. We gotta connect more. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make that event that you invited me to a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, we gotta find a way to connect more. But yeah, while I'm thinking about it, let's go to our comrade Atiba, and let's see what he had to say about our sister Assata Shakur.
Well, Queen Mother Assata Shakur, I'm gonna say this here on a personal level. Once I read her autobiography, that was the first shero I ever had in my life. This sister did some stuff that I know these guys, and even myself probably included, I called myself trying to be tough, but I don't think I was that tough. She showed me what the strength of a Black woman really is. The thing she endured after she had got captured, right, by the pig force, how they had treated her when she was in the hospital, sticking their fingers in the bullet wounds, and poking her in the eyes and shit. I mean, this is right after she got shot by the cops, and they was trying to get her to talk and give information. Some people might think like police don't do that. No, yes they do. They do. They do all kind of old vicious attack. And she stood her ground all the way through it. I mean, to me, that's hard as you get, you know. And every time I let brothers in here read her autobiography, they say the same thing. They like, damn, is that real? That really happened? Oh man, shit. And she, you know, they really get talking big about it. So it just lets you know that, listen, man, there's a strength inside of us that we don't know. And I hope that the spirit of Assata carries on through all of our sisters. You know, hell, her spirit can carry on through the brothers.
And that was our brother comrade Atiba, behind the belly of the beast, and we're actually trying to get that brother back on the airways. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? Because he's trying to get some of the resources up, and I meant to get a certain cash out from the comrade to see if y'all wanted to help the brother with certain resources that I can't really mention all of them right now. But yeah, you know, look to hear from this brother a lot more. He has a dynamic program inside the walls where he helps to transform the criminalistic mentality of brothers who have been locked up to a revolutionary mentality, and he does an absolutely great job of it. So, you know, big ups to our comrade Atiba. Big ups to Adanya. How you doing? Long time supporter and great jewel for the struggle. Very strong sister, intelligent sister. Good to hear from you. Assata Shakur, you said peace out, peace to you too, Queen. Good to hear from you. Brother Joe Gonzalez, he said, speaking of Fred Hampton, I welcome y'all to visit us in the Second Rainbow Coalition. All right, brother. You got to give us some more information about that particular organization, the Second Rainbow Coalition, and especially if it's in the spirit of Fred Hampton. That's something that we definitely should be a part of and give our 100% support to, because brother Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Hampton, did a great job of articulating that you know the problem is not black, white, Chicano, or you know South American or whatever. You know what I'm saying? The problem is this system that is oppressing us all. And that's evident today because you see people like, oh, I'm a Democrat, forget them Republicans, forget them, I'm a Republican, forget the Democrats. And the reality is the 1% are controlling the situation, are controlling, you know, the politics, and really got us fighting each other so the system can continue to maintain and flourish under this system of oppression and exploitation. So yeah, big ups, you know, brother Joe Gonzalez, give us more information about that, you know, how we can be a part of it. Sister Adonia said, is that still in Florida? So I guess she's talking to you, comrade Joe Gonzalez. So, you know, yeah, when you give us update and more information about the Second Rainbow Coalition and how we can participate. So but yeah, so we talking about Assata Shakur. And you have any more remarks about our Queen Mother Assata Shakur, who's now transitioned?
Yes, and she was the leader, you know, of the Black Liberation Army. That's the whole thing about why she was wanted by the FBI and the CIA, because she of her leadership ability, you know, and so. And they'll pursue anybody, but they had to break up the Black Liberation Army and all other revolutionary organizations during that period of time. That's why sometimes we must understand what the defeat of the Black Liberation Movement of the 60s and 70s and 80s was about, and how the government was able to, under the counterintelligence program, FBI and CIA counterintelligence program, to dismantle our organization and to put our leadership to flight. And so therefore she stood up to the end, and she showed the leadership of African women. African women, you know, have the role of African women as leaders has been neglected in terms of a lot of things that we talk about in terms of our movement. And that's why, like, she was a sterling example of a true revolutionary. And we got other true revolutionaries that are in prison that we need to begin to inform ourselves of their condition, so that we can begin to inform our people to what we should be doing as a people today.
Yeah, exactly. You had anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, let me say this on that, not on that particular one, but just in terms of what we're dealing with, organization. Yeah, like when the brother talk about the the coalition of black folk, the Rainbow Coalition, that Fred Hampton talking about. We're talking about revolutionary organization coming together throughout the United States and throughout the world, so that we can begin to break down the system and deal with all the things that all the people, especially people who of so-called color, have been subjected to the same things that we have been subjected to. And so therefore it is a natural coalition that that could take place, that not something that talking about the system, because a lot of problems that we had in the past were thinking that this system was going to be able, that we might be able to integrate into this system. And we know that that's not going, we who are revolutionary know that this system will never have anything for us. And so our goal is not to take over this system as it exists, but to create a new system under which we can all come together. I think that's an important thing that Fred Hampton was pointing to, and that's why he was assassinated, because he was trying to move to a level where all the people could come together, all the different peoples can come together, and that's always represents a danger to the system.
Exactly. I think you really brought up an excellent point. What Chairman Fred was doing, and what he had the ability to do, was to take that revolutionary elements from different people, different races, different groups, and articulate, the common struggle, the common enemy, and show clearly how this beast is really oppressing us all, and using our differences to put us against each other so they can maintain power. A simple divide and conquer dynamic that has been going on for centuries and centuries. My brother Joe Gonzalez said, I'll send you the flyers to our next revolutionary study group, comrades. It's every Thursday. Okay, all right, definitely. That's what time it is. So we are national organizers from various peoples building a united front. Beautiful. Exactly. So yeah, make sure we look out for that. Every Thursday, the Second Rainbow Coalition, study group, and organizers. So what else we got? And we're gonna have more about Assata Shakur when we leave the show, but there's a couple more stories that I do want to get to before it gets too late. Burkina Faso, with one of our favorite African leaders, Ibrahim Traoré, has basically rejected a proposal by the United States to take in foreigners being deported as a part of President Donald Trump initiative to make America great again, I guess. Basically, Burkina Faso said this was an indecent proposal, and they flat out rejected this proposal, and saying, no, we're not taking anybody. And the United States was basically trying to ship out people who was from Africa, from Burkina Faso, from different parts of Africa, from places that weren't anywhere close to Africa, and just say, hey, take everybody that we don't want. And this is real significant because I guess it's been the tradition, if you want to call it a tradition, that African nations basically bow down to anything that the West say, and just accept anything, regardless of how detrimental it is to themselves or whatnot. And Burkina Faso is really leading the way in a change of mentality and attitude on the continent. And hopefully other leaderships will follow suit, and really they are. But basically he says no when they stand up, and because of this, the United States, Donald Trump has, I guess you can say, sanctioned Burkina Faso, and rejected the what they call it, the passport entry to the United States for people in Burkina Faso. So basically, the people of Burkina Faso can't enter into the United States anymore, which can cause a lot of problems. But our comrade over there in Burkina Faso is standing strong, saying, "No, we're not accepting that. That is a terrible deal for us, and we're just not going to let you bully us anymore." Well, you have any comments on this, comrade?
Yes, and unfortunately, we had even Ghana had accepted some immigrants, so-called immigrants, the Mexican immigrants or whatever, South American, into Ghana, and they were trying to get a particular one named Garcia, who was being tried in Tennessee, and try to get him to try to get Ghana to accept him, but Ghana has rejected it as well. So, but what I'm saying is Uganda and several other countries, or Rwanda, have fallen into the trap of imperialism by facilitating Donald Trump's treatment of so-called immigrants, and this is what we got to really understand the weakness of the leadership in certain parts of Africa. Burkina Faso is one of the strongest countries in Africa, even though it's very small in size. It's smaller than Ghana, smaller than Uganda, but it has stood up against the West. It has, in other words, it has rejected the West domination of its resources, and Mali and Ghana and Burkina Faso and have come together and have called for all the other countries to join them in rejecting the West domination of Africa.
Yeah, definitely. So big ups to Burkina Faso and our comrade Ibrahim Traoré. Continue to be that light, that example, because when you think about it, Africa is really the future. First of all, Africa has all of the resources, all of the natural minerals, all of the precious metals, everything that you need is in Africa. All the resources that will allow you to really run the world. They have all the uranium to make the nuclear weapons, all of the precious minerals that's needed for your smartphones, and all the new technology is all in Africa. And Africa has the youngest population in the world. So the future is in Africa. That's why European people, first of all, they're trying to keep us out, keep us away from it. That's why it confuses me when, so many of our people come up with different ways to separate ourselves from Africa. A lot of us don't even want to claim that we're African anymore. Anyway, but that's another subject for another time that I'm pretty sure we will touch on. But yeah, definitely. So big ups to our brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso. It's another story that I wanted to get to. I wanted to make sure that I get to before we get out of here, because something happened on October 1st in Chicago, on the South Shore apartment buildings in Chicago, where there was an overnight raid, an ICE raid, actually, where they were supposedly looking for a few so-called illegal immigrants in this overwhelmingly African apartment complex. And it ended up being a terrorizing, violent event where everybody in the entire apartment complex were marched out. Several were zip tied, had little children zip ties, little children walking out naked, didn't even have any clothes. It was an aggressive action. It was brutal. And it was just, another example of the brutality in which we face. And this was at the hands of ICE. And I've always said to all of the African people here in America who want to talk about this war that are waged against our brothers and sisters in the Chicano community, South American community in America. For some reason we say, well, that's not our fight, we need to stay out of it for whatever reason. That's not a political response, that's an emotional response. We have to understand that the reality, the harsh reality, is the same beast the same system that is oppressing our brothers and sisters is the same one that is oppressing us. Just because the heat is intensified on them at this particular moment doesn't mean this is our time to sit back and chill. You know what I'm saying? When one of our people are being oppressed, when one of our people are being, brutalized against, this is happening to all of us, and it's just a matter of time when it comes down to us, and it hits us on the head. I even said, many times that, okay, you saying that this is not our struggle now, but hey, guess what? We're next. So what do you have to say about this?
Okay, so the United States of America, what people call in the world America, is a bully, and it's a bully state. It's a state that is illegal. It's just as illegal as the state of Israel is, because it has oppressed all the indigenous people. Many of the people that they call immigrants are indigenous to what they call the United States of America, before the so-called 13 colonies and all that. And so therefore, so when we look at this, that's why we shouldn't be talking about foreigners. There's no foreigners. We are foreigners as far as that's concerned, because we were brought here and enslaved and forced to build up this monolith that is out that is in the world, that is attacking everybody, that's shooting down Venezuelan boats and killing people, declaring war that can't be declared on a state, on ship that's coming from Venezuela and other states in the South, in South America and Southern America, or what they call Latin America, which is really not Latin America, because you got the Caribbean and all the other people who are African, and these forces are being attacked by the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and this is one of the things that we have to begin to understand. That's why we support the Palestinians, in their right to have their own, to retake their land, in Palestine, and we declare that the illegal state of America, what they call America, the United States of America, and the illegal state of Israel are criminals and that are committing genocide against people, that are resisting being a part of the oppression that we are part of.
Exactly. And since you mentioned Israel, do want to touch briefly on the fact that there's been a negotiation for the ceasefire of the so-called war on Gaza, which like we talked about earlier, this ain't a war. They didn't negotiate a ceasefire on a war. They just apparently negotiate a ceasefire on a genocide. This is genocide, which is happening. So did you want to comment on that?
Yes. So genocide. So when we talk about what's happening today, talking about peace in the Middle East, it's a shame that we don't understand that Gaza is not a state. Gaza is a colony. The West Bank is a colony. They're colonized, areas, and under which Israel is killing the people and starving and doing everything possible to kill off the people so that they can take so the designers can take over the whole bang, of Palestine. So it goes all the way back to 1948, when they created the state of Israel and stole the land and made Israel have more land than what they call Israel than the people of Palestine, and ran many of those people out that was under the so-called state of Israel. And like when we talk about what's going on, this is genocide. These criminals, I'm talking about Trump and Netanyahu and all of these forces they're talking about they're doing peace, that they're going to have a ceasefire and all that. And then we got our Arab countries, many of our so-called Muslim and Arab countries that are basically going along with this. This is not a peace agreement. This is an agreement to make the government, make Hamas submit and to begin to dismantle the organization, whatever organization that was resisting Israel during this period of time, to cease to exist and to utilize other forces, reactionary forces, Arab forces, to enforce this. And so, you know, we must begin to understand that there's no force in the world that can stop this from going, because the United States is the most powerful country in the world, and it has used its power to maintain the condition and to even eliminate people as much as they have done in the United States in terms of the indigenous people. And so therefore we must begin to understand that we are part of the indigenous people of the world that has been still bullied and basically killed off by these forces.
Exactly. And before we get out of here, I did want to end the show with our sister Assata Shakur.
Okay.
As we've talked about, she did transition September 25th. She's now an ancestor, and she's a great revolutionary, a great example, a great symbol of resistance and a symbol of our victory. You know, with Assata, we saw someone who they tried to take her out. They tried to break her, but they never did. And she ultimately escaped, and she ultimately gained her freedom. And they never caught her, regardless of how much they tried. Put her on the most wanted list. She was the most wanted woman in America in history. A bond cap for her, a reward for her capture reached up to $2 million, I believe. But yet, you know, she still remained free. The United States government, under the Obama administration, when they opened up relationships with Cuba, went to the Cuban government and said, hey, can y'all give us Assata? And basically the Cuban government said, go to hell. She is, you know, someone who is seeking refuge and fleeing a country that has politically oppressed her, and she has asylum here. So this is a great story that our people need to know. We need to know about our heroes and sheroes, and especially those who Assata died at old age, basically. You know, I wish Chairman Fred Hampton could have died of old age. I wish Malcolm X could have died of old age. I wish that Patrice Lumumba and so many of our freedom fighters could have died of old age. But this sister did, you know, and she was a powerful sister. Like I say, if you have not read her writings, if you have not heard her speak, matter of fact, we're going to end the show with her words. But, you know, like I said, look her up, learn about her. She is extremely inspirational. She's extremely knowledgeable. She articulates this system just as good as anybody has ever done. Do you have any closing words about our comrade, our sister, our ancestor, Assata Shakur?
Yes, she is one of the greatest leaders that we've had from the Black Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s. And but we must also remember, like I say, those people who are still in prison, such as H. Rap Brown.
Yes.
I'm sorry that I can't remember his African name, but he's in prison in Colorado or whatever what so-called underground prison and that they have created to keep people from, from breaking out or moving out, or people from going in to take them out. And these are kind of, yeah. And he was there, he's there for so-called killing a couple of police or something like that. But she, like I said, was able to escape. Matter of fact, she had a child, only child in prison. They put her in a men's prison. They didn't have security in the women's prison, but she was able to escape. She was able to be broken out by our brothers in the Black Liberation Army, and this is a tribute to Assata Shakur and the importance of her contribution to our struggle.
Definitely. And it's you said, we're going to end the show with our comrade, our sister, our ancestor, Assata Shakur, in her own words. So we'll see y'all again next week. Thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for all of your comments. And I see we got more coming in as we're leaving. Brother, he said, Brother Prophecy, let's chop it up after this live stream. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. But like I said, we're going to end you with our ancestor now, the great Assata Shakur. Free the land, fam.
Free the land.
My name is Assata Shakur, and I was born and raised in the United States. I am a descendant of Africans who were kidnapped and brought to the Americas as slaves. I spent my early childhood in the racist segregated South. I later moved to the northern part of the country, where I realized that black people were equally victimized by racism and oppression. I grew up and became a political activist, participating in student struggles, the anti-war movement, and most of all, in the movement for the liberation of African Americans in the United States. I later joined the Black Panther Party, an organization that was targeted by the COINTELPRO program, a program that was set up by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to eliminate all political opposition to the U.S. government's policies, to destroy the Black liberation movement in the United States, to discredit activists, and to eliminate potential leaders. Under the COINTELPRO program, many political activists were harassed, imprisoned, murdered, or otherwise neutralized. As a result of being targeted by COINTELPRO, I, like many other young people, was faced with the threat of prison, underground, exile, or death. The FBI, with the help of local police agencies, systematically fed false accusations and fake news articles to the press, accusing me and other activists of crimes we did not commit. Although in my case the charges were eventually dropped or I was eventually acquitted, the national and local police agencies created a situation where, based on their false accusations against me, any police officer could shoot me on sight. It was not until the Freedom of Information Act was passed in the mid-'70s that we began to see the scope of the United States government's persecution of political activists. At this point, I think that it is important to make one thing very clear. I have advocated, and I still advocate, revolutionary changes in the structure and in the principles that govern the United States. I advocate self-determination for my people and for all oppressed people inside the United States. I advocate an end to capitalist exploitation, the abolition of racist policies, the eradication of sexism, and the elimination of political repression. If that is a crime, then I am totally guilty. To make a long story short, I was captured in New Jersey in 1973 after being shot with both arms held in the air and then shot again from the back. I was left on the ground to die, and when I did not, I was taken to a local hospital where I was threatened, beaten, and tortured. In 1977, I was convicted in a trial that can only be described as a legal lynching. In 1979, I was able to escape with the aid of some of my fellow comrades. I saw this as a necessary step, not only because I was innocent of the charges against me, but because I knew that the racist legal system in the United States, I would receive no justice. I was also afraid that I would be murdered in prison. I later arrived in Cuba, where I am currently living in exile as a political refugee. The New Jersey State Police and other law enforcement officials say they want to see me brought to justice. But I would like to know what they mean by justice. Is torture justice? I was kept in solitary confinement for more than 2 years, mostly in men's prisons. Is that justice? My lawyers were threatened with imprisonment and imprisoned. Is that justice? I was tried by an all-white jury without even the pretext of impartiality and then sentenced to life in prison plus 33 years. Is that justice? Let me emphasize that justice for me is not the issue I am addressing here. It is justice for my people that is at stake. When my people receive justice, I am sure that I will receive it too.